Francis Bacon, Founding Father of America. Part 1, Beginnings. From the very beginning, Francis Bacon, as the secret founding father of the United States of America, has been suppressed by his orthodox biographers, editors, and commentators. This began with his first editor and biographer, Dr. William Rawley, who lived with Bacon for the last 10 years of his recorded life, from 1616 to 1626, at the very time of the early period of the first permanent English settlement in Virginia and other settlements in the New World. Even though Dr. Rawley possessed detailed secret knowledge that his Rosicrucian master was the prime mover in the Virginia enterprise, he passed over it in complete silence in the first English biography of Bacon and the editions of Bacon's works that he edited and published over a period of several decades. Some 250 years later, writer and historian William Hepworth Dixon made these passing comments. In no history of America, in no life of Bacon, have I found one word to connect him with the plantation of that great republic. Yet, like Raleigh and Delaware, he takes an active share in the labours, a conspicuous part in the sacrifices through which the foundation of Virginia and the Carolinas are first laid. Like men of far less note who have received far higher honours in America, Bacon pays his money into the great company and takes office in its management as one of the council. To his other glories, therefore, must be added that of a founder of new states. It would probably astonish Hepworth Dixon that even though he had briefly mentioned Bacon's role as a founder of new states in North America, that this very deliberate pattern of systematic suppression, which had so astounded him, has continued right up to the present day. Bacon's great editor, James Spedding, takes refuge in silence on the subject. Professors Jardine and Stewart, who have Hepworth Dixon on their bibliography, make no mention of Bacon's key involvement. American Professor Ellis is either unaware or chooses not to mention Bacon's pivotal role. Likewise Marco Paltonin, in his ODMB entry, doesn't refer to Bacon's critical participation. So, what is the reason for this 400-year secrecy, silence and suppression? The reason why the demonstrable truth that Francis Bacon is the true founding father of the United States of America has been systematically concealed because it is inextricably entwined with two other very important secrets about the great English philosopher. Firstly, Francis Bacon was the secret founding father of the Rosicrucian-Freemasonry Brotherhood, who, with him, were responsible for the founding and establishing of the United States of America. Secondly, Bacon is the secret author Shakespeare, seen as the most important cultural force that moulded the spiritual, philosophical and political life of the most powerful republican democratic nation in the Western world, strategically presented as having been written by a man of the people, William Shakespeare. The beginning of the 17th century was the period of the great expansion into North America, secretly directed by Francis Bacon and his Rosicrucian-Freemasonic Brotherhood, that was to forever change the future direction of the modern world. Several earlier attempts at establishing an English settlement in America had run into difficulties, and through these earlier expeditions had provided the necessary knowledge and experience in paving the way for the colonisation of America, the situation at the turn of the century had now become critical. In 1606, the Virginia Company was formed to organise and promote the colonisation of Virginia, and shortly after, the first permanent English-speaking settlement in North America was established at Jamestown, Virginia, in 1607. The seed which grew and evolved into the first modern constitutional and federal republic, the United States of America. The great American historian Alexander Brown, in the preface to his standard work, The Genesis of the United States, observes that the period between 1605 and 1616 constituted the most vital period in the history of the formation of the United States of America and the future direction of the world. And he says, "This was the period of the first foundation. It found many Englishmen ready and resolved to secure for their country and for their religion a lot or portion in the New World, regardless of the claims of Spain and Rome. It witnessed the granting of the first public charters in England and the planting of the first public colonies in Virginia. It saw the greatest difficulties overcome, and it closed with the irrevocable establishment of the English race on American soil. It was the crucial period of English occupancy of North America. If the enterprise had then resulted in failure, the United States would not now be in existence." The identity of the original founding father of the United States of America, Francis Bacon, has been carefully concealed from the conventional pages of history and the pages of his orthodox editors and biographers. But it was certainly known to Alexander Brown, who cryptically reveals it to us in The Genesis of the United States. The first page of his preface, which sits immediately above the passage quoted earlier, very deliberately produces the following apposite words from Lord Bacon. "As in arts and sciences, to be the first inventor is more than to illustrate or amplify. And as in the works of God, the creation is greater than the preservation. And as in the works of nature, the birth and nativity is more than the continuance. So in kingdoms, the first foundation or plantation is of more noble dignity and merit than all that followeth. And the foundation that makes one of none resembles the creation of the world, which was de nihilo ad quid, from nothing to something." Sir Francis Bacon. In the June of 1609, under Sir George Somers, Admiral of the Fleet, a fleet of ships set sail from Plymouth with men and supplies to strengthen the colony. On the 24th of July, one of the ships, the Sea Venture, carrying Sir Thomas Gates and William Strachey, who was to be appointed Secretary to the Council, was caught up in a fierce tempest off the coast of Bermuda, where they became separated from the rest of the fleet and ran aground on the islands. The ship became wedged between rocks, but fortunately everyone got safely ashore. The rest of the ships successfully made it to Virginia. After building 2 ships during the winter in Bermuda, the shipwrecked crew arrived at Jamestown in May 1610 and joined up with the rest of the expedition. The first arrivals found the colony in Jamestown in an appalling state. Many of the colonists had died in the winter of starvation, and provisions were low and disease rampant. In the absence of any direct authority, anarchy reigned, with the whole colony on the point of collapse. News began to reach England that some of the key figures had been lost at sea, and the circumstances at Jamestown were dire. In an attempt to allay the growing disquiet and raise much-needed funds, the Virginia Council entered in the Stationers' Register on the 14th of December 1609 a true and sincere declaration, which was most probably published shortly after. The text of this original rare edition was reprinted for the first time by historian Alexander Brown, which he believed contains more historical information regarding our foundation than any other publication of the authorities or authorised by them. A true and sincere declaration, states D.G. James in The Dream of Prospero, is a masterly, noble and moving document, and was heavy with destiny for the future of England and the United States. On the 8th of November 1610, the Virginia Council of London entered in the Stationers' Register a second similarly entitled document, a true declaration. The identity of the anonymous author of the two historically prophetic documents issued under the auspices of the Virginia Council has never been fully determined, and until recently has attracted very little or no discernible attention. In a lecture at Oxford University in 1950, D.G. James states, Bacon's authorship of the Declarations, or at the least his great hand in their composition, becomes clear to anyone who, having read over the Declarations, recalls or then reads over others of Bacon's writings. To read over the first book of the Advancement of Learning is to see the same style, ordinance, and learning at work as show themselves in the Declarations. Or again, there are of the true greatness of the kingdoms of Britain, and an advertisement touching a holy war. There are also, smaller in scope, the essays of the true greatness of kingdoms and estates and of plantations. The same hand is to be seen in all. For self-evident reasons, the Virginia Council, of which Bacon was the key member, attached strict secrecy to all communications, manuscripts and writings relating to the colony that it did not want conveyed to the public, that might in any way jeopardise the success of the projects and future of the North American continent. The first recorded performance of The Tempest took place on the 1st of November 1611 at the Royal Court of James I. It opens with an inspired dramatic enactment of the tempest faced by the Sea Venture, which occurred off the coast of Bermuda as the colonists headed to Virginia, location of the first permanent English settlement in North America. This was a dramatic symbolic portrayal representing the birth of what became the United States of America. The Tempest is a special play that occupies a unique place in Shakespearean dramatic literature and is deliberately printed as the first play in the Shakespeare First Folio. Its central godlike figure, the scientific philosopher Prospero, is a complex dramatic portrait made in the image of his creator, the scientific philosopher Francis Bacon, founding father of modern science and the modern world. Through his all-knowing, all-seeing mind, the scientific philosopher Prospero Bacon controls and directs the future destiny of humankind and can be seen as the commander-in-chief of the Rosicrucian Brothers who govern the invisible Solomon's House in the New Atlantis, with Solomon's House or Solomon's Temple the central legend of its outer body, the Freemasonry Brotherhood. In the Temple and the Lodge, under the heading Freemasonry and American Independence, Bagent and Lee revealed they were familiar with the belief Freemasonry was transplanted to the New World at the time of the Jamestown settlement. And they say, according to some traditions, a form of Freemasonry or Proto-Freemasonry came to the New World as early as the Jamestown settlement of 1607 and established itself in Virginia, working to promote the kind of idealised society outlined 20 years later by Francis Bacon in such works as The New Atlantis. The Rosicrucian thinkers of the early 17th century were obsessively aware of the opportunities America offered for the idealised social blueprints that figured so prominently in their work. Philosopher and writer Manly P. Hall is less diffident and confidently states, after the Jamestown settlement gained some semblance of order and permanence, descendants of those men who formed the original Baconian society left England and settled in the colony. It was through them that the great plan began to operate in America. Lord Bacon guided the project and probably outlined the programme to be followed after his death. On the 17th of February 1607, in response to objections made by Nicholas Fuller in the debate in Parliament on the union with Scotland, Bacon, while praising the fortitude and virtues of the Scottish race and the advantages of a union with this proud nation, provides an insight into Virginia for the plantation of America. and he says, "Ireland was waiting for colonists to till it, and the solitude of Virginia was crying aloud for inhabitants." This is the first public utterance made by Bacon regarding Virginia, yet it is not found in the printed speech. It is, however, present in the journals. The Virginia Council issued its first charter in 1606, which established a Virginia Council in England comprised of 13 unnamed members who, it says, were to be appointed by us, our heirs and successors, and that it shall have the superior managing and direction of all matters concerning government and the colonies. The second charter, issued in 1609, lists a large number of shareholders drawn from nearly all walks of life, and listed among the 52 named members of the council included Sir Francis Bacon. A third charter in 1612 registers Thomas and John Digges, sons of Sir Dudley Digges, whose brother Leonard Digges contributed a commendatory verse to the Shakespeare First Folio and editions of the Shakespeare poems. So too Bacon's cousin, Sir Henry Wotton, a member of the English Secret Service and his Rosicrucian-Freemasonry Brotherhood, who wrote the epitaph on Bacon's monument at St Michael's Church in St Albans. The author responsible for the three charters has not been identified, although several historians and academics have suggested and stated that one or more were partly prepared or drafted by Bacon. He was the guiding preeminent author of the 1606, 1609 and 1612 Virginia charters. It would only be natural that Bacon would be chosen to prepare documents of such importance. In 1610, Bacon became one of the original founder members and large shareholder of the Newfoundland Fishery Company. This resulted in the second English plantation in the New World, being established by the London and Bristol Company at Cooper's Grove in Conception Bay, under the supervision of John Guy, who sailed from Bristol in 1610 in 3 ships with around 40 colonists. D.W. Prowse, in A History of Newfoundland, states that it was entirely due to the great Chancellor's influence that the King granted the advances and issued the charter to Bacon and his associates in Guy's Newfoundland Colonisation Company. Bacon was undoubtedly the guiding spirit in the enterprise. Indeed, Goslin, in the Life of Sir Humphrey Gilbert, observed that it was more than probable that he, Bacon, drafted the charter. In 1910, to commemorate the 300-year anniversary of the colonisation, the Newfoundland Post Office issued a series of stamps. The 6-cent stamp commemorates Lord Bacon. The caption underneath the portrait describes Bacon as the guiding spirit in colonisation scheme. In search of his fortune, William Strachey left London and set sail for the New World on the sea venture. While still residing in Virginia, or shortly after returning to England, he began to write the History of Travail into Virginia Britannia, which he probably completed around the end of 1612. The third and revised manuscript was presented to Bacon in 1618. To the Right Honourable Sir Francis Bacon, Knight, Baron of Verulam, Lord High Chancellor of England, and of His Majesty's Most Honourable Privy Council, accompanied by the following dedicatory letter, where he refers to Bacon as a most noble patron of the Virginian plantation. Much of the secret planning for the New World by Bacon and his Rosicrucian-Freemasonry Brotherhood was carried out at Canonbury Tower in the lodge rooms away from prying eyes. It was most likely here that Bacon anonymously composed what is known as the Great Charter of Virginia in 1618. The historical importance of the document and its profound significance for the future United States of America was incisively articulated by Charles Mills Gailey in his Shakespeare and the Founders of Liberty in America. This was ratified by the Virginia Court in London in 1618, and under its provisions was established in the year following the first representative government in America. It was followed 3 years later by an ordinance and constitution for council and assembly in Virginia, dated 24th of July 1621, again anonymously written by Bacon, wherein, upon the charters thus culminating all future rights and liberties of the colonies, North and South, of the revolutionary America of 1775 and of the Republic of today, are built. In New Atlantis, his blueprint for America, Bacon reveals a vision of a society free from suspicion and ignorance. It foretold of a society built on love and the advancement of learning in all arts and sciences. Its realisation required virtuous people to selflessly labour secretly for the everlasting benefit of humanity and the future ages. In a speech touching the recovery of drowned mineral works prepared for Parliament by Bacon, then Lord Chancellor of England, he attested to the practical application of his vision unfolded in the New Atlantis. For by this unchangeable way, my lords, have I proposed to erect the academical fabric of this island Salomon's house, modelled in my New Atlantis. My ends are only to make the world my heir, and the learned fathers of my Salomon's house the successive and sworn trustees in the dispensation of this great service. The most remarkable part of the virtually unknown passage has, as far as I am aware, hitherto passed unnoticed and uncommented upon. When referring to his benevolent and magnificent plans for the future of humanity, Bacon states his ends are only to make the world my heir. Ordinarily, a statement of such incomparable magnitude as to border on the unbelievable, unachievable even, but through his Rosicrucian-Freemasonry Brotherhood, it was a desire he would secretly achieve. His secret plan for the future direction of the United States of America and the rest of the world. In his recent masterly and groundbreaking edition of Bacon's History of Henry VII, Professor Weinberger reveals its importance to the rise of modern republicanism and the politics of progress, which ingeniously presents a picture of a modern democratic state that now characterises the Western Hemisphere and much of the rest of the world. Professor Weinberger says, "The history is a window to the spirit of modern politics and government. Secularism, utilitarianism, republicanism and democracy." Bacon wanted to pave the way for a society based on modern science and technological progress. Such a society would be essentially egalitarian, because the efforts of the few, scientists and inventors, would serve the desires of the many. The truly discerning and daring will understand, when they add everything up, that the history actually shows the way to a world in which kings are no longer necessary. This Baconian republicanism was transplanted onto the soil of North America in what became the United States of America, the most powerful republic in the modern democratic Western world. Around the emblem on the title page of the Rosicrucian Utopia New Atlantis that provided the philosophical and scientific foundation for the future Rosicrucian Freemasonic United States of America appears the inscription, "In time the hidden truth will be revealed."